Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to be chairing the subcommittee that oversees FEMA, and if ever there's an example of the cost of doing nothing, it's in the case of resiliency. So it's great for me to hear, especially from my colleagues across the aisle, this recognition of the dangers and the damages caused by climate change and the need to address that moving forward. So we'll be working together on those issues. Thank you. My question to this very distinguished panel, and I thank you all for being here, has to do with priorities. As we have heard among the questions, everybody's got a project they really care about, whether it's a tunnel or a bridge or a water project or responding to some kind of disaster. In Nevada, it's the highways, I-15 that's like a parking lot from my district to yours, Mayor, the extension of I-11 from Las Vegas to Phoenix. We've seen a number of studies that show that if we don't do something about expanding access, those roads are going to be like Labor Day every day. And if they are, people are going to travel less, which will affect the economy, which will hurt jobs, and will certainly hurt Las Vegas that depends on that kind of travel for our tourism economy. We don't have earmarks, unfortunately. I wish we did. You might want to comment on that, too. But then, because of that, we're going to have to set some priorities in this committee. Now, the Building America's Future has a call for a national infrastructure strategy. We have a national strategy for moving freight, for a highway program. Wouldn't it be a good idea to have a national strategy that looks at perhaps bi-state projects, maybe prioritizes some of those so they will maybe move up the list for things that should be built and can be more competitive for funding and will put us with a more national reach rather than just having to compete for little pieces? Would you address that, Mr. Secretary, and all of you? How do we come with a strategy that makes this work? When we have the money, where do we put it, and when do we put it?
I think you can put language in the bill that is not earmark language, but is language that gives priority to projects where there is intergovernmental cooperation, where there is interstate cooperation, where there's opportunities for states to cooperate, cities to cooperate. You could certainly make that a priority and include that as language. I just want to say this about earmarks, and I'm sorry to take the time to do it. One of the reasons I left the Transportation Committee and got on the Appropriations Committee is so that I could help my district out. I never dreamed up one earmark on my own. All the earmarks that I ever got from my district came from constituents who came to me and said, hey, we need a new health clinic, or we need this, or we need that. This idea that these things are dreamed up in Washington is nonsense. And if you don't have earmarks, then you're going to have bureaucrats or people running these departments deciding where the money goes. Unless you put language in the bill that says where there's cooperation, where there's collaboration, maybe they ought to have a higher priority for funding.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I think America's mayors would support that as well as earmarks, because we know the democratic process by which they come up. But absolutely, think about across state borders and think about regions, because oftentimes there's small towns that are part of larger regional cities and counties. When they work together, we see this in Minnesota. We got that passed when we did the Los Angeles County measure that I mentioned. I think there should be some sort of reward on that leverage piece. And 3 or 4 members have now said it. Let's not be parochial. Let's care about that bridge that's in somebody else's district. We in Long Beach and LA have a port that's important for America, and we get about $200 million that we generate from that harbor maintenance trust fund, and we get about $4 million back. So we're contributing greatly to every other harbor inland, on the coast, et cetera. So when we stop being parochial, we actually will move America forward because we are intertwined with each other.
Well, the Governors Association shares that. I can't speak for all of them on earmarks. I can speak from being there, and what the Secretary said is I put them all on the online. I had requests from city managers, and a very conservative newspaper said, well, we're usually against earmarks except for these because they're really good, because local community put them in. I trust you to make these decisions. You are the professionals. Go to your mayors, as I know you do, bring those things forward, and then all of us have the courage here. We have in states our STIP where we prioritize projects. You can do that too. If I were asking for money from my congressional district, and New Jersey made the case, and it was a stronger one. Maybe I'm on next year. But I think governors are already collaboratively working together. We're prioritizing projects. Those locks and dams on the upper Mississippi River carry the bulk of this nation's agricultural product. It's in all of our best interests that we're investing. That's not a Minnesota, a Wisconsin, Illinois project. It's a U.S. project. So I agree with you on that. I wish you would have the conversation about how do you make sure you're overseeing this money in a smart way. Certainly as a governor, I want to come to Congressman Stauber and ask him about the Twin Ports interchange and why we need to get that done and how that impacts this nation's economy. That's a better way to do business.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.